This is The Change Physician, episode 235. Welcome back. I'm Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. We were just talking about how we pronounce names. And we're here with our returning guests, Akaisha and Billy Kaderli. Did I say it right?
That's correct.
All right, I did it. Well, thank you for coming back. There's some good news on the front. I understand you have your 5th edition of the Adventurer's Guide to Early Retirement, a new perspective. We're kind of curious. Kevin and I were talking before got on the air as to what prompted you to go with a 5th edition. What was different or needed to be changed about it?
Well, there's a lot of changes in the book, and we are now 70 years old, and we're in our 33rd year of retirement.
Yes.
And so, the last couple of years with all the COVID stuff and the challenge to traveling and everything and then we've had a 2-year bear market. And so all those things created some obstacles and opportunities. Absolutely. And so one of the bylines in our book is, are you seeing windows or walls? And we think that's important. We're just natural optimists. And so we always try to look for what is the best thing that we can do to optimize the situation as it happens, as it comes to us. And that financially, emotionally, health-wise, whatever that
travel-wise, medical-wise. We get a lot of email from our readers, and that oftentimes generates articles from us, and we put some of that information into the book. So people were asking about several things, and boomers are wondering if they can retire, or assisted living, any of those kinds of things, medical care, that type of thing. So all of that generated new material for us, and so we decided that book needed to be updated.
Absolutely. A
lot of people, we know people that were they've got the finances and they were planning on retiring a couple of years, or a year and a half, 2 years ago. And then this bear market came about and they pulled back, and there's some fear there of letting go. And when you've got a job and you've got some income coming in, and you can still invest in the markets, but there's you have to, in our opinion, you gotta once you get there, you gotta figure it out. You gotta cut and just do it. I mean, you got that far in life that you can figure problems out and figure out how to manage yourself. And so, you gotta have some confidence in yourself. That's for sure.
And there's never a perfect time to retire. No. Never.
Yeah. But and that's what I wanted to kind of pull in early here, is this idea of kind of transitioning. And for those of you who don't remember when we had our first interview with you guys, I think what is absolutely amazing is your story where you basically transitioned into this financial independence, early retirement, and you were 38, I think, or 39.
That's correct.
39. So this is your literally your fourth decade going into this. Correct. And so to start off, because your book is dense. I mean, we were looking at this over 300 and something pages. You're covering a ton of material here. But what I also found really interesting was there's a large section on kind of the mindset and transition that occurs with this. And I think a lot of people aren't going to, some people are so focused on, I'm just going to retire. If I get to this magic date or whatever, then my life is going to change miraculously. But you bring up some really good points. And so I'm kind of curious, with your 4 decades of experience here, what were the difficult mindset hurdles that you had when you transitioned from being kind of the employee or entrepreneur state into this financial independent state?
Well, do you want to say? Go ahead.
Well, we have realized over the years, and after having spoken with other people who want to retire or have retired, that the money is not the issue. What the issue is the emotional component of taking that leap. And that can be everything from, who am I without my job? How am I going to support myself? What am I going to do with my time? Relationships with family, with friends. Sometimes that changes quite a bit. If somebody gets ill, if a spouse gets ill, your older parents might get ill, something like that. Or if you choose to travel and one of the spouses decides they thought they wanted to travel, but they didn't really. Or maybe you move overseas and then they say, oh, nope, this isn't for us. It's all the emotional stuff that, it looks good on paper, but that's probably the most difficult minefield to manage. And it's your own personal flexibility, your own emotional strength. That is the challenge.
I think not having a paycheck on Friday is an emotional upset for some people. And now in our particular case, we were entrepreneurs owning a restaurant, and then I became a stockbroker branch manager, and my pay was never guaranteed. I worked on a commission basis, and so I was used to that. I was, when we owned a restaurant, we got paid last. Whatever's left over after all the employees and bills get paid, that's what the owners get. So we were kind of used to not having a paycheck. So I think that was a little bit of an advantage to us. And in the book, I outline a way to get a paycheck on Fridays, if that's in fact what you want.
Yeah, it seems like you both of you were accustomed to the discomfort of uncertainty, if that's kind of
to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that it ever gets any easier. I mean,
No.
you do get more practiced at it, but it's still something uncertain is uncertain.
I mean, none of us know what tomorrow's going to bring. And I was in Guatemala when they shut down the country. I was there with a friend of mine, and then they shut down in March of 2020. We got in there 3 days later. They shut the airport, the borders, public transportation. And fortunately, Akaisha and I had been in and out of that country numerous times by land. And so this other fellow I was with, I told him, look, we're going to get out of here. We decided we needed to get out of there because we weren't going to get stuck in Guatemala. And so we hired a coyote to get us out. And that's how we did it. We bribed away through checkpoints and got to the Mexican border and kissed the ground.
You got to be creative.
Yeah.
And trust yourself.
So,
Yeah. Well, that's self-efficacy. I mean, that's something that people not everyone has that or the confidence to
if
be
they
resourceful.
if they travel with me, they're going to get it.
Well, and I think that a lot of that is traveling without I was trying to like handrails or something, or because there's a lot of people who say they travel, but they're not. I mean, there's traveling in doing it, basically being American in a different place. And then there's traveling where you're actually embedding yourself within the new environment that you are and trying to adapt to that new environment. And I think that's really what we're kind of talking about, this idea between moving from this field of certainty, where there's either certainty of paycheck or certainty of social economic standing or certainty of social standing, et cetera, and moving into this uncertain realm and being able to be very flexible with it. And it made me think of this quote, which is, people prefer the certainty of misery to the misery of uncertainty. And so can we explore that a little bit more with people that you have? I mean, again, I'm just going to keep going back to this for the audience here. I mean, I'm just amazed by you guys. I mean, this is literally 4 decades. So you guys are like my heroes when it comes to this stuff. Because all these people talk about it and we're going to do blah, 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 and you can early retire, but they either haven't done it or they've done it for 2 years, or they've done it, but then they've transitioned in such a way that their retirement is being funded by telling other people about how they can retire, kind of a deal. So I just like having you guys on specifically because of your experiences here. And so when you've worked with the people that you've worked with and seen the people that you have over the last 30 plus 40 years, how would you recommend people move into this comfortableness with uncertainty? Or are there some, I know you outlined some of them in the book. Could you give us some examples though, for the listeners today?
Sure. One thing we like to mention in the book, and I believe it's a chapter, it's a lifestyle, not a vacation, when you're regarding the travel. And so many people treat it as a vacation. So they start, staying in more exclusive places, or even all-inclusive places. And we prefer to get down and dirty with the locals the best we can. And, we'd like to stay in nice places, but we go on the street for, street food or whatever it is we need. So that's just been our style from the get-go. And that's built confidence in us to be able to handle awkward situations.
One of the things we'd recommend is in terms of like starting today, right now, is to just get out of your routine. Be willing to break that routine. Routine can be really comfortable. Everybody likes routine.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got ours. And people have said before, other travelers, like the hardest step is getting out of the reclining chair and go to the door. Once you're out the door, then it's like you're going, you know what I mean? But just breaking that routine seems scarier than it actually really is. And because the routine, it's comfortable, but then it can just become like a grave, or then you become afraid of what's on the other side of the door. Okay, so you're going to break your routine. So you order something different off the menu. You walk on the other side of the street. You wear a new color or whatever. You wear a new hat, a new pair of socks. You know, and then because then you're going, well, that's not really me, or what do people say, or what if I don't like that thing on the menu? You see what I'm saying? And it's like the world does not stop if somebody does not like your socks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be okay. It really is. And so though, if you can handle just the anxiety of that, and maybe somebody might say something kiddingly or jokingly or critically, if you can handle that, so you've got it started, you've got the movement started, and then you can move along from there and just be open to new information. A lot of people, they know what they know and they're good at what they know, but it's really hard to learn something new or be open to something new. And right now the world's changing so fast that you can be left behind in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
I mean, even today we're adjusting to traveling because of neither one of us want to get locked into a country again. And there's some countries that are flirting and some doing masking again. And you know, what that leads to next, we don't know. And so we say, okay, we're just not even going to bother with that country. So, you know, we're looking to go to Asia and Europe this year. And, you know, we're both just watching the news and some websites that we watch and other travelers that have been there recently and what they're saying, things like that.
Yeah, I'm curious, we're talking about adapting and modifying. I'm curious when it comes to, when you go back to your book and all the additions and talking about mindset, and it always seems like, you know, they always say every 10 years you kind of have a different outlook on life and whatnot. Do you feel like the additions have kind of shifted with your mindset, or you think the additions are more just additional information you just learn along the way? Do you feel like that was like just the strengthening of the mindset, or the shift in the mindset has been part of those addition changes?
Yeah, I think both. And the fact that we just turned 70, you know, that's changed ourselves. I mean, we're not as spry as we were. And
That's
you know,
hard to admit.
but you know, it's hard to admit that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I mean, my mind is one of a teenager, but my body is, you know,
a little slower.
it's moving slower. So, you know, we have a line in the book that now we're, you know, pass the ibuprofen, please.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
well, but that's just life. I mean, you know, we're realist about that, and so we adapt our style to that.
Yeah, we're really freedom oriented, and that's one of our driving passions, is to not be locked in. You know, we may be slower, but we're not stopped, you know. And this last year with COVID, we lost friends and family members, and that jars you. You know, we're not invulnerable, we're not forever. And that brought about a whole lot of like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it now, or we're not going to do it. You know, it's not forever.
Yeah.
I think there's a saying out there. It's the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years.
I love that.
Well, you know,
We are not in the no-go.
No, we're not in the no-go
Not
years.
yet.
No. We definitely are slowing down a bit though.
Which is okay.
Which is, you know,
Yeah.
we still like having 2-hour lunches.
Yeah.
2-hour lunches. That sounds good.
It's just a little less go. Not
A little less. That's
little,
right.
yeah.
A little less go. Well, and I want, because you bring up a lot, and again in your book where you talk about like healthcare, and then I did like the chapter where you're talking about kind of assisted living and sort of that transition towards the end, because, you know, I look at things of what holds people up, and it's like, oh, well, do I have enough money? Am I going to do this? And in a lot of the little Facebook groups I'm in, man, people, I've seen people quote like, well, you have to save $1 million for your for your assisted living care, and you have to do, and which is, first of all, it just like blows my mind, period. Because, you know, do what you guys do and go out and travel and stay in shape and, you know, keep your minds rested so that you don't have to worry about that. But the chapter that you were talking about assisted living as compared to the United States versus somewhere else, could you kind of go into those details? Because I don't think people think about those options so much, or maybe think, hey, you know, I'd like to go to like Chapala and do what the Kaderlis do, but, you know, I'm scared about health or scared about this.
Sure. I think that's a real valid point. And I think talk about getting out of the box. You know, like I said, we've gotten older. We've had parents die on us. We've had relatives be in assisted living. My aunt had dementia, and her 7 children were paying thousands of dollars each a month for the care that she was receiving in the States. And, you know, initially 10,000 a month was doable. And then they finally, you know, then it was 8,000, and then it was 7 and 6 and 5,000. And finally she had to go on Medicaid because it bankrupted everything and everyone. Okay. So, you know, this is years watching this. And of course we've known other people. Meanwhile, especially here in Mexico, the Mexican people understand that the boomers and Americans and Canadians have this issue with healthcare. It's very expensive in our home countries. And so they're offering more options for assisted living. Like, it's a booming business is what I'm trying to say. And you can get a very decent place to live with all your meals and transportation and Wi-Fi and laundry and cleaning and all that kind of stuff for $2,000 a month. You can add on to that package. There's another place just right up the road that gives you a wellness program. They have a memory care. There's swimming pools and restaurants on the property and gymnasiums and all that kind of stuff. And along with everything else I just mentioned. I mean, your personal medication, your incontinence supplies, those are not included, but a lot of these places have doctors and nurses on property, or they come for 3 times a week visit. You know what I'm saying? And those prices, you can own the place, you can rent the place, you can buy the land, you can not buy the land. So there's just like an active adult community, except that it's an assisted living community. And this is just the beginning. You know, the boomers are just now the older boomers are now into that assisted living era, but there's all these other people from behind us that are coming in. So these countries, and not just Mexico, but they see this as a business opportunity, and they want to give you what you need. And because of things are cheaper here, everything from rent to wages to supplies, they're able to give you what you want for a much more affordable price.
In our situation, our plan is to just hire somebody to come and check on us or come and take care of us the best to, you know, as far as we can maintain living in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
People have, excuse me, honey, but those people who have their own property will often build a casita on their property. And so that will be where the live-in care person will live. And then they give a salary plus food and so on and that kind of stuff. People who like us who live in apartments, we would just rent out another apartment so that that person would be here on the complex, check with us several times a day, cook for us or take our laundry out or whatever it is. And we're still in the culture that you can have doctor visits or visiting nurses. They come to your home.
Yes.
So, and you know, in our particular area, we can basically walk anywhere to all of our doctors, and we've got dozens of pharmacies all within walking distance and so on. So this is although the Mexicans do not put their family into assisted living because it's a cultural thing. Americans and Canadians are coming down, and even people from Europe and England, you know, that whole area, Western Europe, are coming here for the assisted living care because it's affordable. The weather's really good. People are kind and warm, you know, emotionally warm.
And they respect their elders here. And I think that's a big deal.
A lot of options.
Wow. You know, you made me think of something I read in your book about keeping the care in healthcare, essentially. Do you mind addressing that? Like, even, you know, not necessarily Mexico, but maybe some of the other things you've seen and some of the health things that you went through? There was some things you noted about that.
Well, we've had situations where we've used medical care in Thailand, and we went to Bumrungrad Hospital to have a series of tests done, and that's an internationally accredited hospital. It's where kings and presidents go. You wouldn't even notice it's a hospital until you get on the third floor. Otherwise, it looks like a five-star hotel. And they give you a translator, and all the doctors speak English. And I've worn eyeglasses since I was 3 years old, and I've had eye exams every year since I was a young man. And that was the most extensive eye exam I'd ever had in my life, is what they did over there. So that's one example. Akaisha injured her finger in Guatemala, and she almost lost it by
Degloving it.
And we had to get her in for emergency care, and then a plastic surgeon in Guatemala City. And we had I think that whole experience over about 2 or 3 weeks cost us about $3,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and the part about the care, it's not uncommon for these doctors to give you their personal cell phone numbers.
Correct.
So that you can, if you're having trouble or an issue with a medication, or if you become frightened because something's not right, you can call them, or you can WhatsApp them. A lot of them will just respond to you on WhatsApp. You can send them photographs of something like your medicine or your swollen finger or whatever it is. You can send them the picture,
I'm in touch with my cardio doc daily. I just let him know that I'm still living. It's a joke.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
But he tells me to come in. He says, "Okay, I want to see you in so many months or whatever." I said, "Boy, you're optimistic." I said,
like
Well,
in Thailand when I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, in Thailand, when we were there, obviously, for us, Spanish is easier to speak than Thai. And so they give you a translator. And one of the things that both of those cultures in Thailand and also, well, in Asia, I guess, in general, really, and in Latin America, is they do respect their elders. They have a lot of deference to older people. And so we'd have this young Thai person practicing her English, going from doctor to doctor, wheeling us around and making sure that we're not afraid, making sure that we're warm enough or cool enough, making sure we have a glass of water or whatever it is, the orange juice after we've had blood drawn or whatever. And the same is here. It's wonderful to be recognized. People will help you across the street. They'll give you their bus seat, because they notice we have more silver in their hair, in our hair, than they do. It's a caring culture. We're not a number.
That's the difference. When you go to the doctor here, they're not going to rush you out. The first thing they're going to do is ask you about your family, and then you ask them about their family, and that's where the whole thing starts. And it's a relationship. You don't feel like you feel like they have a vested interest in you, and you're not just a number. You're not just I don't know how else to say it than just a number being pushed through the system. And like Akaisha said, they will. I'm on WhatsApp with every doctor I've ever had here.
Yeah, I'm curious because the litigiousness of the U.S. Because WhatsApp, I don't think of as like a HIPAA compliant, or not that they have HIPAA per se in those words, but like a patient privacy. Is there ever a concern or expression of, there's a lot of trust, it seems like.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of, yes, I could see where you would call it trust, but there's also like a lot of common sense. This is the easiest way to do it. If you do read that section in our book about receiving medical care in Chapala, I was just I called it a cascading series of events where just everything kind of came together. And I'm WhatsApping people. I'm getting general x-rays of my whole mouth. I'm getting x-rays of this and that and EKGs and everything. And everything's flying over the WhatsApp and digital from the mouth x-ray to the doctor, and I have the hard copies. And it's like, it's common sense, and it's like, you want to get it done or you don't, and everyone is very or like, for instance, I don't always tolerate antibiotics very well. My stomach just goes into knots. And so with one doctor, I'd say, look, can you do this without antibiotics? Can you do this fixing me without wrecking my stomach? And so he'd look at his options, and he works with you. right? And we have acupuncturists and massage therapists and naturopaths and regular Western doctors and Eastern doctors, and they work with you. You're part of a team.
Yeah. Yeah. Very personalized. Keeping it
Mhm.
personal.
Yes, very much. It's like the 50s, in my opinion, in the US.
Yeah.
You know, where you had the doctor who had he was, 3 doors down.
Yeah.
That was his office. It might have been in his home.
Yeah.
And,
You-
if something happens, you call him and he can come over. They come to our place if
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah. You make me think of like a total topic that would go off on a tangent that we could spend an hour talking about is why is it
course.
we don't respect our elders, or why is it we've become this problem? That's looks like you want to make a comment about that, Akaisha.
Oh, I will. I think it goes back to the individualism that our country was founded on.
Yeah.
And we're all pioneers, or we have pioneer blood in us. And that is what I don't want to fragment the family, but we have no problem moving out, moving across the country,
Yeah.
or being offered a job on the other side of the country, or whatever. I mean, we don't think twice about that stuff. Well, in the Latin culture, it's really family oriented, and they really, I mean, they'll all live in one house if they can, or whatever. Or if they don't, they live near their parents or kids or whatever.
There's a little bit of give and take, like Billy and I are very freedom oriented. We both moved out of our original homes when we were young. I mean, I was a teenager, and, I moved across the country from Ohio to California when I was 21. My grandparents on both sides came from Europe for a better life. So like that itchy feet or whatever, that independence, runs through my blood. At the same time, like Billy was saying, the family does get fragmented. And whereas here, there's people, everybody lives in the same house, everybody since you were a child, their grandparents, everybody like that. But there might not be as much freedom to come and go or think differently out of the box or whatever.
Because everybody's got eyes on you.
Yeah. So, but it's always
you know.
going to be a balance between freedom and security and, individuality and belonging with a group that supports you. Those are like human conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is fascinating that Canadians, Americans, the Western, Western Europe, that they're flocking to an environment that has that sense of closeness and connectedness. I mean, don't you find the irony of that? Like interesting?
Very much so. I can tell you personally that this is the first time in my life, well, I mean, since we've been living in Chapala, is that I felt part of the community. In other places, I was just a neighbor or whatever.
Yeah, you drive home, your garage door goes up, you go into the house, go into the kitchen from the garage door, and then you don't see your people. But I do think that, I mean, Americans are very ambitious, or at least we used to be, but I think you can still be authentic and love those around you and be honest and real and still be ambitious and still travel and still do things, be your own person, have your own mind. Like Billy and I were discussing earlier today, I think it's healthy to have a disagreement with someone and still remain friends. If you like chocolate and I like vanilla, what's the big deal? And a lot of people, they like end the relationship if you don't like their flavor, which how do you ever learn anything new? I'd rather the one with the best ideas wins. Let's have part of your idea and part of mine. Why can't we have an ice cream sundae? You know what I'm saying? So, and I think people a lot of times will cut another person out because you don't agree with them. And like in the Latin culture, for instance, you can fight or win a game of tennis, and cuss and everything. And then you have a beer after the game.
Yeah. Wow. You should be projecting that to the world, especially to America. I mean, with the last few years, we could use that kind of guidance.
Yes. Yes.
Most definitely. Kevin, sorry, I've been like usurping the questions and time.
No, it's good. It's good. Because there's so much to cover and there's so many interesting.
I love I mean, I started going into, I was like, oh my goodness, there's 327 pages of amazing wisdom that I need to get. And I need to slow down and read this and really, really take my time through all this, because for people that have a sense of adventure and independence, I can relate to that. There's there's so much optimism, and also gives you a sense of security knowing that you've been through that, and gives you an idea of the possibilities of freedom and how you can set yourself up for that. So
That's what we hope to convey.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Well,
I love
which
it.
wants me to, again, want to lead me into one
Yeah.
of my more interesting chapters here is how to fail at early retirement. So
I love that.
You guys have had a lot of exposure here, and I'm sure you've seen people who have thrived and people who haven't thrived. So if you had to pick some of the criteria for, like, how are you going to fail at early retirement? What are the top 3 or 4 that you would say?
Definitely being stubborn or stuck in a box. You go from one box to another box and you don't allow new information to come in. Housing is one of the largest categories of expenditure in anybody's budget, whether you're retired or no matter what you're doing. And some people want to live in a particular city or in a particular neighborhood because of the status or the access to whatever, theater or fine restaurants. But if it's costing you an arm and a leg, we knew someone who was making $250,000 annually passive income and couldn't afford San Francisco. You know what I'm saying? So there's lots of international cutting edge theater and fine cuisine places all around the world that don't cost that much, or just drive into town, have access to it from another a town nearby. So I would say housing cost is definitely one. Being stuck, into your box.
I think some people they either need a hobby or something or they don't have a list of what they want to accomplish or what direction they want to go once they retire, because it's not going to come to you, and they get bored, and so now they don't know what to do. So they're just wandering like a fish out of water. Because they're used to having a structured job, or they're used to being somebody in a job, and now all of a sudden the phone doesn't ring, or nobody asks for advice, and they're just like lost. They're getting tired of playing tennis, or tired of going to the golf course with the same foursome, and so at some point they just don't know what to do. So they start looking for work.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Or like too much time with the spouse.
Which I have no problem with working. I mean, but no, that's a big one. Too much time with the spouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know people.
Yeah.
Akaisha and I worked together. We were in an RV together. We're used to tight spaces and being close to each other all the time.
But not all couples can do that. And so you need to have time to yourself. You need to have something that interests you, a hobby, or, you can even like travel on your own if you want to, or
Yes.
like, some people want to grow the roses in their garden and have an herb garden and have a couple dogs and that kind of stuff. And the other person wants to travel. Well, okay, so blend it. The person who wants to travel, go.
Yeah.
Go for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, whatever, and then contact their spouse with photos and face talk and whatever, and bring the spouse in, but don't look at your partner like you're keeping me from my happiness. No, you're not. You're keeping you from your happiness.
I travel a lot here in Mexico with other guys and with Akaisha, but I always ask Akaisha if she wants to go. It's her call, because sometimes she's got a real craft thing going here. And so she likes working with crafts, and sometimes she just likes to have time to herself and me out of the way. And that's fine. I go off on these different towns or whatever with a couple other guys, and we do our thing, and I come back. And then sometimes I say, I got to bring you back here because this and this and this,
Yeah.
So.
I'm curious, some of the things I've come across with people who, interesting, of course, in my work, people who've retired, and it's always interesting to see the differences in perspective. Some that were prepared for it and had the hobbies already, and then those that just filled their space so much with just work that they just fall flat on their face, not having any hobbies. Right. And we're talking a lot about the mental aspect to retiring and whatnot, but I'm curious what your take is on this, and because I feel like it's, through the years you start recognizing who you are, or maybe I need to do more of an inward journey to understand what I'm all about or what makes me happy. And you see quotes that say, finding yourself, or But I'm curious, and there's no right or wrong answer. I guess I'm curious what it is you feel helps you understand yourself. Is it finding yourself or creating yourself? Like, what do you
That's a
think
good
it is?
question.
Interesting.
I think it's both actually, because you do create yourself. I mean, you know, you create the environment that you're in. If you're not a curious person, you know, you don't learn anything new, you don't try anything new. And so you're just creating the same thing day after day, or the same pattern day after day. And so you do create who you are. I mean, we know people that were engineers that decided they wanted to take up acting. Well, they created that, you know what I'm saying? And they, you know, they maybe were as good as they could be or whatever, but you try something new, or maybe you wanted to bicycle across whatever, you know, or hike the Appalachian Trail. You know, you take an option and you move into that. You know,
Yeah.
you've got to make it. You can't, you just don't sit on the couch going, okay,
Wait for
come
it
to me.
show up.
Yeah,
Again, like Akaisha said, the hardest part is that first step
yeah,
to get out the door. And once you're out the door, things happen.
Mhm.
Yeah. That is the hard thing, because that whole thing about, you know, like you said, Kevin, the whole misery thing. Like, I mean, we all
Yeah.
create these
The
habits
comfort
and
of misery
routines.
versus
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is an element of stepping outside your routine and your habits in order to discover or entertain the possibilities of something else you might fall in love with. But
Exactly.
Yes.
yeah,
Exactly. And you'll never know unless you do it.
absolutely.
I grew up with the phrase that people would rather stay with the devil they know than deal with the devil they don't know. It's the
Mhm.
same thing that you just
Mhm.
said, but because
Yeah.
it's fearful, you know. Yeah, I'm miserable, this stinks and everything, but it's so scary out there,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that overprotectiveness, we think it's keeping us safe, but it's keeping us sometimes from
In
the
a box.
delights. Yes, yeah, it's
Well, and I
fascinating.
think this brings us full circle to the beginning, to something that you said. You go, it's never about the money, right? So there's some base amount you actually have to have funds coming in. But
Sure.
through this discussion, hearing somebody who's, you know, earning 250,000 through passive income versus somebody who's making 40,000, as long as you're flexible, you're going to be able to do what you wish to do. And I think that may be important, particularly for our particular audience, is because there's this idea, it has to be this, it has to be this, it has to be this. And if I never hit this number,
yes.
I can never retire. So if you want to expand on that a little bit more, because again, what was your beginning portfolio? How much was it when you started?
500,000.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think that some people are like, oh my God, how can they must be eating nothing every day. So
Do I look like that? Don't answer that.
Yeah,
Well, I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. What was
that it's just not just the money. And when we started off with how much we had, $500,000, and
You know, I go back where you have to have some confidence in yourself, and the money's important, but nobody knows the future. We've gone through 4 bear markets now. This is our 4th bear market that we've experienced, and in the 2007-8 one, that made us reconsider things at one point. We'd already been retired for many years, and so since 91, so we had about 15 years in. And what we did is I used that as an opportunity to restructure our portfolio and get away. I got away from using quote mutual funds into using ETFs because they were more versatile and they traded in real time. And then we also restructured it in a way that produced a little bit more income, so we had more cash flow. And that's where you know the difference between us now and we were 5, 10, 20 years ago is that we are moving we were ever so moving our accounts or our finances into more income producing things, and because we have growth now, we're good. So it's just you know, cash flow is also good, and we can always reinvest it if we want to. I hope that answered some of your question.
Well, it does, because it also kind of makes sense, is where when you stopped when you were young, so your actual physical flexibility was much greater. And if I remember from the first interview, you guys did a lot more traveling, and you did it in kind of the backpacky way, you know, the hardcore traveling way, if we want to say that. And that brings me back to the kind of thing, because there's all these portfolio drawdown strategies, you know, when they're talking about the 4% roll and things like that. And they're like, project your lifespan, and then you can withdraw this much per year. And there's never made a whole lot, huh? I'm sorry.
If we only knew when we were going to
If we only, well, that's the thing, that you just don't know what's going to happen. And so what it kind of seems like you did is you had your portfolio, that you had your income, and what it really sounds like when you were initially going out is you were spending less than you were than your portfolio was growing. So your portfolio was growing the whole time. And then after a set period of time, when you went through 2000, did you say the 2007? It was the 2007.
Yeah, 2007
was a big one.
Yeah.
So then you start looking at it. You kind of readjust that point, but it just kind of made me think about that, is when one of the things that you can do to kind of cut some of this uncertainty is sort of move into this retirement phase, and stuff is doing something very similar, is just making sure that your income is not more than your expenses are not more than your income, right? So you're not looking at necessarily a drawdown strategy anymore. It's just kind of making, what is your finances, and then making sure that, you know, you're not overdrawing or depleting your nest egg so much.
Right. And one other thing, because, you know, when you said somebody's got their number, they're there, you know, they're there. Now what? Well, if they're concerned, they can geo arbitrage, which is something we stumbled into. Now that word wasn't invented back in 91.
Yeah.
But moving south of the border, and you know, our dollar goes a lot further down here. We can live on, I mean, last year I think we lived on $35,000.
And we're pushing it. We're trying to spend
We're trying to spend more.
We're trying to spend money.
You know, you know, and it just, how much is it? I mean, that people would be surprised the difference between the U.S. and here. Like the egg thing right now. What are you guys paying? $8, $9 a dozen for eggs or something?
I don't know. It's a lot more apparently.
we stocked up before it crashed or something. I'm like, we have all these eggs. I'm like, wow, man, we can just, you know, maybe we need to save these for the future, but
no, sell them on eBay.
Really?
Egg arbitrage.
Right, egg arbitrage. They're $1.25 a dozen here. So, you know, we didn't have these shortages like when the toilet paper shortage was crazy up in the U.S. No, that wasn't anything here.
Yeah, of course.
So some of this stuff, I just scratched my head and said,
What's
I think
going on?
some of this stuff is manufactured up there because, you know, they're blaming the egg thing on the avian flu. Well, I guess those birds don't fly south. You know, I guess I don't. Maybe that wall's taller than we think, and they can't get across. I don't know, but we certainly don't have these issues here.
But you buy those affordable little bidets, and so you don't need as much toilet paper.
My sister's paying 50 cents an egg. We're paying 11 cents an egg. I'm going, what's the matter with you guys? You know?
Oh, my
so
goodness.
you have family in the States, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do they think about you guys? How come they're not down there with you? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, you know, that's changed over the years.
Yes.
We did not get a whole lot of support in the beginning, but as time has gone on, you know, my sister told me the other day, you really made a good decision moving to Mexico, you know, because they're experiencing a lot of inflation, and like I said about the egg thing, and there's different tax laws, and, you know, they've structured their full portfolio differently and so on. And like we mentioned, we're trying to spend more money. I mean, we're staying in better hotels, we're doing more traveling, we're going out to eat, we're picking up the tabs, we're giving away gifts. I mean, it's like, geez, Louise, you know, how much, you know, I mean, you know, it's all relative, but.
Now, excuse me, there's inflation down here as well. I mean, I'm not trying to kid you, but generally what happens is once inflation gets to a point, then the peso will devalue. And that keeps things in a good relationship with us and the US dollar. So,
Gotcha. Wow. I'm so inspired by you two.
No, thank you. I'm so glad.
I mean, I know a guy down here who lives on $1,100 Social Security.
And he's got a girlfriend.
He's got a girlfriend.
They go out.
Yeah. And he lends her money.
Wow.
He doesn't lend. I should take that back. He doesn't lend her money. He gives her money because he never sees it again.
Wow. So I'm this may be a dumb question, but like if you retire and you become like a resident in Mexico, you should still be getting your checks, even if it goes into an outside bank from the US to like Mexico?
Yes, we get Social Security. We have our accounts structured in the United States. And because through the 9/11 and the banking laws and all this stuff, we need to have a domicile in the US for banking purposes.
Gotcha.
And so, so our Social Security gets direct deposited into that account or those accounts.
Okay.
And then we withdraw through ATMs down here or anywhere in the world.
Makes sense. Okay, great. Well, I know those details matter. I mean, when you're
They matter.
Yeah.
Us expats are always talking about this because things are always changing.
Yeah.
We're always concerned about the banking situation and whether or not they're going to put another rule in that could trip people up. That was a big one. I know a friend of mine who got caught up with his brokerage account. He tried to open a third brokerage account. It was all with the same company, but it was a different account within that company. And they shut it down because they said, no, this is a PO box. This is not you don't live there.
Yeah.
And so he got caught up with that. And he said, okay, just don't do it then. So he didn't want to mess with the other accounts.
Wow. So have you guys created a permanent residency in Mexico, or are you?
Yes.
Okay.
We are permanent. It was about 4 years ago this month that we applied and received our permanent resident. Permanente is what they call it. And that's exactly what it means. It doesn't mean we have to live here. It doesn't mean we can't travel forever and not come back or come and go as we want, but it's permanent.
We're still American citizens. We don't vote here.
No.
We've not become Mexican citizens. We don't want to give up our American citizenship, but we're a permanente residence.
Yes.
So when you're coming back internationally, then so when you're going through customs, do you go through the Mexican custom lane? Being a permanent
when we
resident?
come in.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we go through the Mexican custom. We show them our green card and they stamp our passport and we're good.
So you would have to give up your US citizenship to be Mexican?
No.
Okay.
No.
Gotcha.
No.
Just curious.
This is one thing we write about in the book. We encourage people that if you have any interest in doing this, we think it's a good plan B, because if something were to happen in the US and financially or politically or whatever, you got a catch-all, you got a place to go. And they have two type of residencies, temporary and permanent. And the temporary one has a less income bar that you have to meet. The permanent's a little bit higher, but it's all based on their Mexican daily minimum wage here, and that increases every year. And just as you had inflation last year in the US that raised Social Security benefits, the same happens here with their minimum wage, and they raise them to adjust for inflation. And so the bar keeps moving higher every year, and that's something you want to consider. If you're, I would say do it sooner than later if you're interested in getting residency.
Interesting.
It's not hard. It's you got to start it in your case. You would start it in the US, your host country, and that's just a matter of getting a hold of the Mexican consulate, setting an appointment, look online at what documents you need to take to the appointments. It's going to be financial documents and a few other things, the minor stuff, where a pension. Proof of a pension. In our case, that was Social Security. And then you go to your meeting and they grant you a sticker in your passport, and you have 6 months to enter Mexico with that sticker. So it's quite flexible. Once you enter Mexico, you have 30 days to apply for and get your green card. That's what we call them, your permanent or temporary. Now, the temporary visa, you have to show up every year at the same immigration office and pay a little bit more money each year until after 4 years you can convert that into permanent, which means you no longer have to do that.
Both my grandparents were Mexican citizens, so I think there might be a different thing there, but I'd have to look into that. Kevin, any more questions?
No, other than I just love talking to you guys. It's,
Yeah. Oh, I'm so
on my
glad.
own, I
Thank
can
you.
definitely say that comfort and fear thing sets in a lot. But for certainly after the first time we talked to you guys, like we're planning our transition. We have a couple kids in school right now. My youngest is starting college next year. And so we're sticking around for that. But I've already told my wife, I'm like, when they're done, we're done. And then we're going to be doing something. And I just keep returning this. It just seems, go to another country, live there. You're on less expensive. You get a chance to really experience things. I mean, we've done a lot of traveling, but I want to live in a place for at least 3 months. So,
Right.
yeah. And I love, and
It's different.
It is, and to be able to kind of see the culture more. And, yeah, so you guys are an absolute inspiration. And I love your book, and I'm going to recommend that anybody who's interested in this field go out and get it, because it is seriously dense.
Thank you.
There's a lot in it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah,
very
the
much.
Adventurer's Guide to Early Retirement, 5th edition.
Fifth edition.
We'll put
Yeah.
the link on there for you on this episode.
Thank
Is
you
that
so
only on your
much.
website,
Yeah,
or is there
thank you.
someplace else? Can they get it through
Amazon?
and Amazon? Okay.
And Amazon, correct.
Okay.
But we prefer they buy off our website, because then we can capture their email and
And-
we can have a relationship with them. If they have questions about the book or whatever, their personal questions, we can guide them or help them the best we can.
Oh, and your email is great. I'm a subscriber on that as well. And I love I think it's on Tuesdays. It gets delivered up here, and
Correct.
put some photos in, and you're like, oh, you want to go eat seafood on the coast, and look at this is what we're doing right now. And so yeah, I
Yes.
would definitely recommend it. It's
Which is where I actually called this hotel down in Mexico on the coast that we go to, Cuccaro Beach, about 2 hours ago. And I asked her, have you got a room for me tomorrow? She goes, yeah, you got to be out Saturday. So we're leaving tomorrow.
That's awesome. Love it. We're going to have to get you back again for sure.
I hope so.
Thank
That'd be
you.
wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, you want to take us out?
I guess if you have to end it now. So.
Put you to work.
Put us to work. Well, thanks you all for joining us today on the Change Physician podcast. This is Kevin Cuccaro with my co-host, Dr. Melissa Cady, and our returning guests, Billy and Akaisha Kaderli, who have been literally doing the retirement lifestyle for 4 decades since they were 38. There is no better people to follow if you are interested in this, and to see people who have done it and done it for an sustained period of time. Highly recommend the booklet we talk about. If you have any questions, please send them to me directly. That's Dr. Kevin at thechangedphysician.com. And until next time, stay well.
Take care.